is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake and Kyle coming back to review week 15, Kyle. The fantasy playoffs, the first round for so many people. We had some underperforming studs, but overall, a pretty good week in fantasy football for a lot of people.
I agree. I was even talking like last night, like it didn't feel like we had, except for like a couple of people here and there, like huge performances by any means, but it felt like a lot of guys that we needed to play well did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we do, like I said, we had a few underperforming studs. We're going to kick off with those here right off the bat. We won't waste any time. We'll get right into it. Justin Herbert was not feeling the fanciest until like the last drive of that ball game to come back from behind, get the victory. That was great and all, but the dude finished against the Tennessee Titans with no touchdowns. And that right there is not going to cut it, because that is a great matchup for opposing quarterbacks. He had 313 yards passing, a big chunk of that on that last drive of the game, but he was a huge disappointment. But here's a name that we'll probably talk about. I know we talk about it probably in the waiver wire type show, and we'll talk about it in running backs. Jonathan Taylor. Now, a lot of people got screwed from the Jonathan Taylor injury early in this game. Now, he only played one touch. He had one touch, Kyle, one reception. It was like 12 or 13 yards. He walked off the field under his own power. You didn't think anything of it. And the next thing you know, you're like,
why is Zach Moss getting goal line carries?
Why the hell is Zach Moss touching the ball so much? And then all of a sudden I'm like, did I miss something? Because I didn't see the injury. And the next thing you know, it comes out, he went to the Blue Medical tent. Sounds like it's a high ankle sprain. He could be done for the year. That's what it sounds like. Not good for Jonathan Taylor owners. He was finally starting to pick it up in a game in which he had an opportunity to succeed. Think of all those touches that went to Zach Moss, Kyle. How excited would you have been had all those touches gone to Jonathan Taylor?
A lot more excited than watching Zach Moss get those touches.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, and I tweeted it yesterday, and I think you even quote tweeted me, which made me feel really special because you don't ever do that to my stuff. But I said, you're never going to win a ball game in the NFL if Zach Moss carries the ball for you 24 times. Like, that's not a way to win games. I mean, obviously it was a monumental collapse by the Indianapolis Colts, but still not what we wanted for fantasy football. Nick Chubb, even though he had a decent game with Deshaun Watson, had 21 carries for 99 yards, but no receptions. And here's what's crazy about this one, Kyle. He's had only 2 games all year prior to Deshaun Watson where he had no receptions. He's now had 0 receptions in 2 of the 3 games with Deshaun Watson. Whatever pass catching work we were getting from Nick Chubb earlier in the year with Jacoby Brissett, that is all but gone. We're reliant on rushing yards and touchdowns, and as of late, there's not many to be found in Cleveland.
I will say, though, it's 99 yards. It could be worse.
It could have been worse, 100%.
It could have been worse. I know that he didn't win anybody a week, but he could have gotten you 40 yards.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was a difficult matchup. I mean, doing that against the Ravens is, like you said, it's definitely better than nothing. Mm-hmm. Speaking of nothing, Miles Sanders, basically 11 carries for 42 yards and a fumble. Miles Sanders was not really a part of this game plan whatsoever.
Plus 1 reception for negative 13 yards.
Yeah,
don't forget
that. I don't even know how you do that. Like, I saw that and I'm like, somebody made a typo somewhere. You know what I mean? But
too.
It's not a good game for Miles Sanders. A horrible time in a good matchup to totally crap the bed. Joe Mixon, 11 carries for 21 yards. 6 targets, 5 receptions, and 33 yards. The problem with Mixon was not only the inefficiencies, but they got down in the first half, and they had to throw it almost the entire second half of that ball game. And even though Mixon got a few dump-offs, wasn't able to do anything big with it, no touchdowns, that hurt a lot of people. And so did Davante Adams. How about Davante Adams in the first round of the playoffs, Kyle? 9 targets, not bad, 4 receptions for 28 yards. That right there is enough to piss you off, Kyle. That's like getting kicked squarely in the sack.
That's bad.
That's getting both and the tip. You know what I mean? That's horrible at this time of the year. But this is what I'll say. The remaining guys that are on this list, they all got targets for the most part. The last guy, we'll talk about him separately. But the next couple guys, they got volume. So like you'd think that you see this volume and you'd be like, of course they probably had a decent game. Stephon Diggs had 9 targets, only 5 catches for 60. DK Metcalf, 9 targets, 7 catches for 55. TJ Hawkinson, 9 targets. You get a tight end with 9 targets. He better be a must start for you every single week. Dude had 3 catches for 33 yards. Mark Andrews, 7 targets, 3 catches for 31. But we'll end it with this guy. Let's talk about Patty Freiermuth, Kyle, because this guy is he's a must-start tight end. He's a top 5 tight end that volume-wise is among the league leaders.
Yep.
Didn't even have a target last week. I get it, right?
Just when I thought I hated Mitchell Trubisky, he goes and does this. And now I hate him even more.
And now I hate him even more. I can't even call him Mitchy Biscuits anymore because I like biscuits. You know what I mean? I can't. I'm a fan of biscuits, so I can't say Mitchy Biscuits because that seems like something that I like.
You can call him Mitchy White Castle.
That's exactly what I'll Mitchy. What are those burgers called?
Sliders.
Mitchy Crave. Can I call him a Mitchy Crave case?
Mitchy Sliders.
Mitchy Sliders. That's what it is for right now because he absolutely screwed over a lot of people by not even looking at Pat Freiermuth. So those were a few of the studs from week 15, Kyle. But we did have a couple misses as well. So of course we're going to own up to those like we do every week in this show. And I will start off by saying this. I'm going to go through my misses at quarterback and running back. And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a damn thing, Kyle, because these are guys that I don't know how many people wanted to trust in the fantasy playoffs. Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson finished as a top 10 quarterback in fantasy football. Did anybody out there even want to start Zach Wilson? No. I don't care that he was playing against Detroit. Nobody wanted to do that. Davis Mills. I don't mind Davis Mills, but then Houston started getting super weird with this whole Jeff Driscoll experiment.
Which we'll talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about him later. But Davis Mills is not somebody who you can overly rely upon. He only threw the ball 24 times. He only completed 12 passes, Kyle. However, finished as quarterback 11 because he had 2 touchdowns through the air and 1 on the ground.
Scoring, baby.
I can't count on Davis Mills to do that hardly ever. How about some running backs? Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon. I liked Pacheco a lot more this week going up against Houston. I expected an early lead. I expected them to run the ball late in the ball game against the worst run defense in football. And not only did Isaiah Pacheco fumble the ball early in the game and basically sit the entire second quarter, they couldn't get a lead against Houston either, so they continued to throw the ball the entire game, and Jerick McKinnon went slap off, 18 total touches for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns again, looking like a damn league winner out there right now because of the usage he's seen here as of late. That hurt a lot of people. Bam Knight. I have him as a miss, but he wasn't even ranked inside my top 24. However, he was like one of those fringe start guys going up against a team that I said I was worried about him performing against because Detroit gets no damn respect. He had 13 carries for 23 yards. I had people in the comments last week, Kyle, saying that they felt confident in starting Bam Knight against the Lions.
There was websites out there that had him listed as a must start.
Yes. Big time mainstream media websites. Bam Knight is a must start because we only look at overall numbers and we don't actually watch the game type of football. So yeah, I was worried about it. I didn't expect it to be that low, but it was bad. Latavius Murray. I don't know. I had him listed on my guys on the outside looking in. Can I see Latavius Murray and expect 24 carries for 130 yards and a touchdown every week? No. Raheem Mostert. It's a running game that hasn't done anything in weeks in Miami. Sure, Jeff Wilson Jr. didn't play, but for Raheem Mostert to have 156 total yards and no touchdowns, even though it's only like 15 fantasy points, 14 points, whatever it may be, not a huge day, but something you're not expecting from the running game there in Miami. I know the weather was better than expected and then got worse later on in the game, but still overall, those are guys that I probably don't feel very comfortable starting majority of the rest of the season anyway.
Majority, if ever.
Ever. I mean, maybe Raheem Mostert. Maybe, I want Isaiah Pacheco to be a thing, but apparently Andy Reid's going to seriously punish you for fumbles. So that's a problem.
All right. Well, we got a few wide receivers that we got to talk about first off. Alec Pierce was in a smash position, but then the Colts decided to go up 33-0 and then just again give Zach Moss 20-something touches for some reason. They took their foot off the pedal. The game script of this game was just complete. No one saw 33-0 of a lead and then taking your foot off the pedal and then not trying to pick back up once the Minnesota Vikings caught back up. This was completely game script that took Alec Pierce out of this, unfortunately. I do 100% feel like if this would have been like a closer game, or if Indy would have been even down for part of the game, that Alec Pierce gets that big touchdown that I talked about last week. He ends up getting absolutely nothing, unfortunately. And that was just a mess of a game. Condolences to you, Colts fans. Chris Olave was in a smash position. Unfortunately, he didn't end up having that big play because that went to Rashid Shaheed instead, who has had some big plays this season and has taken away a couple of touchdowns that should be going to Chris Olave. We need Chris Olave to get some of those big touchdowns.
Yeah,
Andy Dalton, if you can help me out there, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Noah Brown, scoring a touchdown.
He scored 2 touchdowns.
Or scoring 2 touchdowns, excuse me. Scoring 2 touchdowns. You got Michael Gallup there and healthy. You brought James Washington back from the IR. You've got CeeDee Lamb. Zeke and Pollard are getting anything. Schultz. And then you get also Hendershot getting a touchdown out of his. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. This is how you give the virtual finger to fantasy players.
Win, but they screwed that up too.
Yeah. But it was a good game.
It was a good game.
It was definitely a good game for sure. What about how I know that we had a lot of questions and a lot of people were wondering about T. Higgins. I mean, T. Higgins looked pretty healthy. The problem is you just can't trust Cincinnati.
Nope.
They just
I can't trust a guy that 2 different times this season was on the field for 1 play or 1 drive and then left because his hamstring.
I know. And what's weird,
in the first round of the playoffs, I was like, if you've got anybody with more upside, like, I gotta risk it over T. Higgins. Like, I can't. And then he ends up scoring a touchdown again, looked pretty healthy, didn't get a ton of targets. I haven't seen the data on how many snaps he ended up playing. I think that would be interested to see that too. But he did end up look pretty healthy. So you know what? If you're still alive out there in the playoffs and T. Higgins is on your team, you're probably going to be starting him next week. But I think you're going to have kind of a yucky feeling the entire time, knowing that he continues to get drug off the field whenever he hurts himself.
He had 80% of the snaps last week, Kyle. 53 total snaps he played.
Okay. So, I mean, it even feels like at that point, maybe was still a little bit limited, that they didn't have him out there as much as they would have liked to. So T. Higgins is another one where it was like, I would love to play him, but I don't know if I can trust him to stay healthy. DJ Moore scores a touchdown. Carolina, they're looking a little bit better the last couple of weeks. Sam Darnold looks okay back under center. They didn't end up winning. My Lions do go to Carolina this coming week, though, so that will be a fun
The Lions are going to win that ball game.
I hope so.
They're going to win that ball game. They're going to be above 500. They're going to be above 500, Kyle.
Woo, all right. I don't remember the last time we talked like that.
Do you remember in the preseason? Do you remember the preseason? You and I don't even know if it was just a conversation or on a video. And we talked about what would make you happy for the Lions. And you said 500 this year.
What I said is when we got to the end of the season, when that graphic pops up on games where it says like the playoff picture and then it has teams listed in the hunt, I wanted to see the Lions in the hunt.
They're there.
They're there. They're in the hunt.
The Lions are hunting.
Washington, the Giants, and they need Seattle to kind of go down to crapper here towards the end of the season.
At least they're in the hunt.
Or at least they're in the hunt.
That's right.
In the hunt.
That's right. Who else
David
we got?
Njoku.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have as good a game as I was expecting. Had back-to-back games with touchdowns prior to that with Watson. Didn't see a whole lot. Dalton Schultz again. Why we're giving touchdowns to other tight ends right now, which sucks.
Yeah, because everybody was starting Peyton Hendershot.
Yep. I mean, if you started Peyton Hendershot in a league and you can send me a screenshot of it on Discord, I'll give you a free draft guide for next year. I
will concur with that because nobody was starting.
Tyler Conklin as well. Tyler Conklin earlier in the week was a start for me because I was actually thinking that they were going to go with Joe Flacco against Detroit, and then they ended up going with Zach Wilson, and it was CJ, who's your mama, coming in with a couple of touchdowns.
I mean, you had it pegged. You knew that the tight end for the Jets was going to do something. It was just the wrong tight end. I hate it when you pick the wrong tight end. Hate it when you do that. 100%. All right, but we also had a ton of great hits. Let's start off with some of those right off the bat. I don't know if I saw more hate for any player in the first half of a ball game than I saw for Kirk Cousins in that game. Everybody and their mother was trashing Kirk Cousins and see, the Vikings are frauds and Kirk Cousins is horrible and yada, yada, yada. And then everybody got super silent by the end of the game when they came back from 33-0 to win. Kirk Cousins threw for 460 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but still the biggest comeback in NFL history. When you look at fantasy numbers, which is really all we care about right now, currently quarterback 3 overall on the week here. So great game from Kirk Cousins, had him super high. I'm not gonna lie, I think I had him at like 7 or 8 this week, and I was a little worried at halftime myself, going, "Oh dear Lord, what did I just do?" And luckily, they throw the ball a lot.
Totally redeemed himself.
Totally redeemed himself. All right, how about Deshaun Watson? I continue to tell people to sit Deshaun Watson, saying, listen, at some point, he's going to be startable. But we just haven't seen that yet, not in this difficult matchup. So I had him as a sit, only had 161 yards in the touchdown, 22 yards rushing. He ends up finishing as, where's he at all the way? Quarterback 21. So he was a sit. That was a hit. Trevor Lawrence, I've had inside my top 10. Trevor Lawrence is playing ridiculously good football right now. And the Jags, dude, the Jags are fun to watch. I don't feel like
Peterson and Dan Campbell should be head coaches of the year. I'm sorry. Just give the awards out right now.
I feel dirty saying, like, I feel like I have to whisper when I say that, Kyle. But like the Lions and the Jags, I actually enjoy watching their football games. I don't know if I've ever said that at the same time. Trevor Lawrence, another huge day. Derek Carr, had him as a start last week, 231 yards, 3 touchdowns. How about some running backs? Kenneth Walker came back, and I was like, listen, I don't love Kenneth Walker. I understand that he helped get you here, but the bulk of his production for the entire season came in like 3 ball games. So let's not go out there and just expect a huge performance against the number 1 rush defense in the NFL. Kenneth Walker, 12 carries for 47 yards, kind of saved it late in that ball game with a huge reception. He had 32 yards receiving, under 10 fantasy points, depending on your scoring for your league. But overall, so many people were just automatically starting Kenneth Walker, and they missed out on some better options because they're kind of blinded by a few big games. What about James Conner? He's another guy I had as a start. I expected a lot more volume going that way. What I didn't expect is for Colt McCoy to go down so early and have to rely on Trace McSorley. So the numbers are even maybe a little bit lower than I had hoped, but he still ended up with 63 yards rushing, 28 yards receiving, did have a touchdown on the ground as well. Ramondre Stevenson, I continued to list as a start and said, listen, if this guy plays, I don't see how we sit him. Like, if anything, we either want him to be completely ruled out or to play, because, I mean, it's just one of those situations where you can't really trust New England, but he was a full go by the end of the week. We knew he was going to start going into the ball game. 172 yards rushing for Ramondre Stevenson, a huge day. Brian Robinson, I included Brian Robinson. I had him as a start. His numbers weren't overly high, but I'm still going to go out here on record and say he got screwed out of the touchdown there at the end of the ball game because of the penalty for Terry McLaurin. Also had another big run that was called back. The guy had a great ball game. He looked great. I'm excited for the future of Brian Robinson. And then the last 2 wide running backs here, we got Travis Etienne and Najee Harris. 2 guys that are pretty high-end guys that a lot of people have worried about starting. Travis Etienne had 127 total yards. Wish he could have found the end zone. He couldn't, but Najee did, having 86 yards rushing on 24 carries, and he was another solid start for a lot of people out there as well.
A big call of the week, Zay Daddy Jones. Woo! What a day for Zay Jones. I mean, he's a guy that for weeks now, I've been telling everyone, why is he not being picked up? Why are we not starting him? And hopefully people have been listening, and I think you have been if you watch this channel, because you've been using him the last couple of weeks and he's balled out for you. So hopefully that continues throughout the playoffs. But the growth of Trevor Lawrence, now it is coming at the expense of Christian Kirk, unfortunately, who hasn't had a super high ceiling like we saw at the beginning of the year. But Jake, I think I even saw you talking about in Discord, he still had like 90-something yards yesterday. So Christian Kirk, just not the upside that we saw because he's not been scoring the touchdowns, but Zay Jones has had a lot of upside as of recent. So hopefully y'all have been playing him. Jahan Dotson, talked about him is when the numbers came up on the start and sit video, they did not equal 15, but I listed him as a start anyway. The last time he played the Giants, had a good game, scored a touchdown, thought it was going to happen again, and it did. He ended up being inside the top 24 wide receivers, gave you a pretty good day. Jalen Waddle was one with all the weather concerns. What's going to happen? What isn't going to happen? Jake and I kind of stayed true to the same like message to everyone. If it gets closer to game time and the field is clean and it is not snowing, we're playing Jalen Waddle. Like we can't go away from the potential upside. Over 100 yards and a touchdown. Did have to leave briefly and go to the blue medical tent. He ended up coming back out though. He ended up looking good on the day. Big day for him. Hopefully you got him in your lineup. Juju ends up having an okay day. Not a great day by any means, but enough of a day to again.
All about volume.
Yep.
Lots of it.
Which was going to be interesting to see with Kadarius Toney coming back, and Toney was healthy this week and it didn't hurt Juju at all, which I think is good for fantasy owners as we kind of finish out the season here to still feel reliant on Juju. Deontay Johnson, there was something weird I felt about Deontay Johnson, and even Jake and I talked on the live stream about how that made us feel a little icky, but kind of the same thing again, seeing a decent amount of volume, not a ton of ceiling, but a guy, if you're starting as like a wide receiver too, you know, he's getting you over the last few weeks anywhere between 60 and 90 yards and quite a bit of receptions, which has kind of helped propping that up as well. Michael Pittman didn't have a big day again, but I think he ended up having 10 receptions for like 90 yards or something like that. A lot of just...
He actually had 90 total yards, 30 rushing, 60 receiving.
Oh, that's right.
10 receptions on 14 targets.
Yep. So a lot of kind of dink and dunk to him. Didn't see quite the upside that we would have liked, but that's okay. Again, if you're starting him as your wide receiver too, and you're getting 10, 12, 13, 15 fantasy points from somebody as your wide receiver too, that's enough to help you win a week. DPJ didn't have the yards that we've seen from him as of recent, but he did end up scoring a touchdown. Again, you know, like I said at the beginning of the show, there was like a lot of okay performances this week. There weren't a ton of guys that like blew up and went crazy. And I mean, Zay Jones was one of them, obviously, Kirk Cousins, you know, Justin Jefferson, things like that. But there wasn't like a ton of them this week. It just felt like we had a very even keeled week where we weren't left saying what in the world is going on again, unless you're Jonathan Taylor owners. And then for the tight end position, George Kittle went off. I mentioned it in the rankings video. I had him at tight end 7, but I said, listen, this is a guy that if he scores, he's as high as like tight end 3 for me still. The upside is still there. Well, he decided to score twice and be the tight end 1 this week. So good for George Kittle. Big day for him. Dawson Knox ends up having a huge day. He ends up going for 90 yards and a touchdown. Juwan Johnson scores 2 touchdowns. Juwan Johnson might be the highest upside tight end play right now outside of Travis Kelce. This guy continues to absolutely ball out. All 3 of these guys I had as starts. They were the tight ends 1, 2, and 3 on the week. And then the one guy that I just had to laugh about on Sunday evening, Jeff Driscoll. For those of you out there in the comment section that repeatedly tried to say that he was easy money this week, or he's an absolute must start, or he's a cheat code this week, y'all must be fans of Taysom Hill because he let you all down. I don't even think he got 3 fantasy points.
I knew he didn't get anything. Let me actually look it up here. He had, where is Houston at?
He had like 8 yards on the ground and like 16 yards passing or something like that.
He had 8 yards passing.
Okay, 8 yards passing.
8 yards on the ground. That right there isn't going to cut it. He had 1 fantasy point.
Oh, 1. He didn't even have 2 fantasy points. So if you started Jeff Driscoll and got cute, ladies and gentlemen, the fantasy playoffs for season-long leagues are not DFS leagues. This is completely different. Stop listening to people that are like, hey, Jeff Driscoll's a play if you're putting in 100 GPP lineups for a DFS contest, not for your regular season league, people.
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't fall for it.
That's the biggest thing is you got to take these things 1 week at a time, and you can't get too cute at this time. You got to run your studs and bring the people that brought you to this point of the season. Week 15 was no different, but now the playoffs continue into week 16, and now all of a sudden we have to start worrying about some of these teams that have already clinched playoff spots. Do they start resting people at some point? That's something we're going to pay attention to here this week, so make sure you stay tuned. But this is going to be our recap show for 15 for Kyle and myself. We appreciate all the support. If you guys enjoy this show, please hit the like button for us down below. People are starting to check out, Kyle, because the fantasy football season is over for so many people.
Don't check out.
I'm telling you right now, I'm going to make a bold statement, Kyle, and hopefully people are still listening. If you Stop paying attention to fantasy football before the season ends in week 16, 15. Do not expect to pick it back up in week 1 and know everything that's going on. You get out of this game what you put into it. So if you want to find success, you have to stay in tune with it all year long so you can make the best choices possible. For Kyle and myself, though, we're going to get out of here for the day. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll talk to you later.